Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Global Glory Chasers. I am so delighted to be with you here today as your host. My name is Dorina Lazo Gilmore-Young. And in this season, which is season 5 of the podcast, I am really honing in on my love for books, food, and travel, and inviting some of my friends to talk about those themes with you. And if you are interested in seeing the Imago Dei, the image of God in the world, in food, books, and travel, then we welcome you to this conversation. And we hope that this conversation will guide and inspire you. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any of the episodes. And I'm so excited to welcome my guest today, my friend Kyle Guerrero. He is actually the missions pastor and director at the Well Community Church in Fresno, California. I have the privilege of attending that church and helping to lead through the women's ministry at the Well. And I've gotten to know him and his family. Our kids are good friends. They're in youth group together. And what I love about Kyle is that he has a passion for different cultures and people around the world. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that passion here. So Kyle, welcome. Can you share a little bit about your family and your season of life?
Yeah, well, that feels like a very loaded question. Our family, well, so my name is Kyle Guerrero, and if you're Spanish speaking, you know I'm saying my last name incorrectly. So my dad is Filipino and Mexican, and we actually have some Jewish in our family too. It ended with my dad and his brothers, but then my mom is Serbian, a little bit of Croatian, and English. And so we are melting here in the United States. And so it's great. My wife was born in Korea. At 6 months, she was adopted in Minnesota, and they are blonde hair, blue eyes, and our wedding pictures are blonde hair, blue eyed people in the background, and then Amy and I with black hair and darker eyes. So it makes it interesting. So anyway, that's our family makeup. We have 3 girls, and then 7 years later, we had 2 boys. And so it has been quite the adventure. And I don't know if I'm getting older or feeling young because of all the energy, but I am trying to keep up with that.
Got it. I love that multicultural, multiracial blend of your family, and even adoption being part of your wife's story, and that you have twins in the mix, which I know makes it interesting. Tell us a little bit more about what your role is at the Well Community Church.
Yeah, so when I first started here, it was only global missions, and I was like, this is my dream job. This is amazing. And so as our church has grown and our desire to serve God around the world, here, near, and far, now I get to oversee local and our global missions. And it is amazing. Like, the nations are coming here. There's many needs here. Jesus needs to be shared here. But as we go out, we get to do that as well with people that have never heard of Jesus before. We get to send people. We get to send teams. And so I think I've been here 8 years now, and I still absolutely love my job. And I work with a great team.
Well, let's dig into your history just a little bit to set some context. I know that you and your wife also have experience with traveling and living overseas. So tell us a little bit about before you came to Fresno, California.
My wife, we were figuring this out the other day. She's lived on all 7 continents.
Wow.
Six. She hasn't been in Antarctica yet to live, but we'll try to work that out before the end of our lives. And I think I've lived on 3 continents. My wife, when she was younger, her mom, her sister, and her moved to New Zealand for a year to live there. They worked with YWAM, many great friends we still keep in contact with. She came back. She went to school in Spain. We lived in Uruguay, Malawi together. That's actually how we met, which has been really great, through a missions agency. And so before we met, I lived in Hong Kong for a bit. And then after we got married, 9 months after getting married, we thought, the best thing for our marriage would be to move to one of the top 5 poorest countries in the world. So we moved to Malawi and worked with World Relief there, and came back, had our first daughter. And after having our first 3 kids, we moved to Uruguay in South America. And we thought, this is it, that we're going to be here for the rest of our life. And we weren't. We moved back. Worked for Youth for Christ in Fort Leavenworth with military students. So we had about 40 different nations represented there. And so it was a great opportunity. And then from there, some things changed on their end. And so we moved to Fresno. So born and raised in California, full circle back to Fresno, California.
One of my husband, Sean, and my favorite things to do is to sit around the table with Kyle and his wife, Amy, and talk about some of our adventures in other countries and especially with missions. So I want to dig a little deeper here, Kyle. So I know that some of your job as a missions pastor and director at the Well Community Church involves traveling to different countries. And I'm wondering where you have gone recently and how you have seen God at work in those places.
Yeah, so in February, I got to go to Western Africa to visit a family there that we support as a church, and it was pretty amazing. It's predominantly a Muslim country, and it took forever to get there. And when we were there, it was amazing, just to see not necessarily the hardship that they're in, but the state of the country. It's an area that at night we would hear shelling, or during the day you'd hear shelling of fighting. So it's far enough away to where it's safe, but close enough to hear it. And so that was pretty rattling. They have kids, their coworkers have kids, but their hope is to bring Jesus into areas of the world that don't have the word. And so they're church planting, they are translating into the local language. And just my short time there, it was incredible to see the work that God's doing in the hearts of man. And it's slow work, right? It's not things that happen immediately. It's, 1 Corinthians 3:7, neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only Christ Jesus that makes things grow. And sometimes I think we want things to happen quickly, and they've been there for many years, and they're still waiting for that first harvest. And so that was exciting. And then in about 3 weeks, I get to go to Cambodia and Thailand. So Thailand is like one of my favorite places in the whole world. I thought when I went there in 95 for my first time, I thought, this is it. I'm moving here. I'm moving out into the villages, to the Lisu, and I thought that was it. And so every time I go back, it's a special meaning for me. And so, but we're going to be going to Bangkok, and we'll be visiting Crew, who we partner with there, to bring Jesus, to share Jesus with Thais. And 1% of them do not know who Jesus is. Only 1% have heard of who Jesus is. And so it's amazing what the workers are doing there in Bangkok. And then we'll make a quick jaunt over to Cambodia and work with AIM, who works with anti-human trafficking. Unfortunately, a lot of it is with kids. And so it's a very dark place, but in the midst of that, there's a lot of light. There's Jesus being shared, and lives are being changed, communities are being changed, and villages are being changed. And so we're just continuing praying for the whole country.
Thank you for sharing some of those experiences. I am wondering, are there any books that you have read that have really influenced your attitude about travel and world missions?
Yeah, there's a lot. For me, there's specific books. So there's a book called Tibet that just kind of gives a look at the history of missions in that country specifically. I've always wanted to go there, and maybe someday I will, but that's just really shaped like, man, God is bigger than the calling that he has for my life or other people's lives. There's many people that have gone before us that have done a lot of work, and sometimes for nothing, or it seems like for nothing. But like they were either martyred or they had to come back to whatever country. And so that book has been great. A really fun book to read. One of the first books I think that got everything ready for me, like excitement, was Bruchko, the story of Bruce Olson, and just being captured and just like on a whim saying, I'm going, this is it, like I have to do this. It's kind of like that holy discontent. And so him going down there, and I was actually sharing this story with someone the other day of him pulling a huge tapeworm out of his stomach. And I'm just like, whoa, and this is all, not to romanticize missions or to make it a sense of adventure, but it's a sense of like, if people don't go, they're not going to know who Jesus is. 1/3 of the world has no access to the gospel. And so like, that's been something that's always been exciting to me.
I'm going to have to look for those too. We'll definitely link those in the show notes. I know another book that you and I have talked about before and that you definitely teach on or help lead groups through is called When Helping Hurts. And I'm wondering, could you share a little bit more about that book and why it's important to you in the context where you lead?
That's such a great question because I actually didn't read When Helping Hurts until I moved here to Fresno, and someone told me about it. And I was like, my gosh, this is it. Like, so okay, to narrow it quickly, it's I think it's all about heart posture. It is about our heart, where our hands are they open up to what God wants to do. If we're there for a week or 2 weeks, you're only there 1 week out of 52. 1 week of you being in that country, there's 51 more weeks where you're not there. And so it is our job to pray. We're not going to change a lot in a week. I think if anything, it's God that changes us. And so when we go down there, what are we doing? How are we interacting? Are we coming with all the answers? Are we coming with solutions? Are we coming with recommendations? Because that's not what they need. But it's their country, their culture, and so we get to enter into that. And if we're talking all the time, we're not going to be able to listen and see what God's doing. And so maybe a quick illustration of this is we do training a lot on just like how to posture ourselves before. What is our heart? I think a lot of times, like I know my hammer's name better than I do the person I'm building this house
Hmm.
for, right? If I look at the hammer, it says Stanley. I know Stanley well. We've worked all hard, the nails, all that, the wood we put together, but I never met the family or I don't know them by name. And so one thing that we challenge all of our people to do is like know their name and know how to pray for them. But more importantly, do they know your name? And do they know how to pray for you? Because that just brings a sense of vulnerability of like, I'm great at building a house or great, I know your name and praying. But are we able to be vulnerable with them as well? Because that's what we're asking them to do. All that to say, when helping hurts is all about heart posture. It's all about seeing the kingdom of God through his eyes and us just, I think, especially as Americans, just kind of clamping our mouth shut with our ears open to the Holy Spirit and to what God's doing.
Mm. I discovered that book years ago when my late husband and I were living in Haiti and we were training teams to go to Haiti. We started an organization that is today called Haiti Gospel Outreach. And I remember just the title of the book convicted me and drew me in. And then as we also worked through that book as a couple and then even with teams in the future, it really did shape, like you said, the heart posture of what the way that we approach world missions, but also just recognizing that when we go into another country, another culture that is not our own, that we have the opportunity to learn from others. And I think one of the things that I felt kind of a discontentment with is seeing that other people will go in with like, okay, I'm going to have this adventure. I'm going to check this thing off my list that I've done a mission.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, that we have this opportunity to go in and say, what can God teach me through these people? How can I see God's glory in these people and how they live their lives and how they persevere, even in maybe some of their culture and their traditions? And so I want to ask you, what are some of the ways that you have experienced God's glory through the places that you have visited?
Oh man, I think you said two things. I heard you say adventure. So this is for me personally. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. So I will experience everything like in a moment. Like when I go someplace, I'm like running around, visiting, like seeing where all the food is, seeing like the souvenirs, where the people hang out, the temples, the whatever. I'm like, all right, gotta move, gotta move, gotta move. I want to see everything. So all that to say, for me, I have to be careful because I can see trips overseas as a sense of adventure
Mm.
and almost cutting God out of it. And so I have to ask him every time I go through this process of God, what do you want to teach me? There is me that sense of adventure because that's who I am. But there's also this sense of like, I have got to uh, humble myself before you. I cannot run ahead of you. I cannot, I want to run with you. And so the sense of adventure is always going to be there. But as we go, or as I go and visit different places, it's always through the people,
Mm.
always through the people. Seeing what God's doing, or in good ways, but even some of the difficult things that, people that have, they're strung out on opium out in the middle of nowhere, or you visit, I think it's the Aka tribe. They have a spirit gate when you walk in through their village to protect them. And so knowing like, okay, God, there's something happening here. And I have to be attuned to what you want because I don't want to miss out. These conversations that we're going to have, if I speak Thai or, or if they speak English, you're going to orchestrate it. And so that's been really like, I love that part. So maybe a quick story. When I lived in China in 97, my buddy and I were going to Yunnan. I mean, back then, I think it was like a 3-day train ride. And we met tons of people on the train. And because that train ride, I believe people came to know Christ, right? But people got on, got off. And so we heard that there was this Christian couple in Yunnan that we were trying to visit. So, right. So, and this is in 97. I think internet was just being invented. And so we got there to Yunnan, to Kunming, and we took another bus ride up to Dali, which is this little town, and we think we found this place. And so my buddy and I, we pull out our Bibles and we just kind of set them down on the edge of the table to see what people's reaction would be, right? Because it's illegal. So as we were sitting there, this couple, they started looking at us differently, and they were eyeing the book, and we're like, oh, I think this is the right place. And so what happened is we started having conversations with them, like minor conversations, and they said, come back later. And so we left and we come back later, and it was amazing conversations, amazing opportunity to pray for them, to listen to them as much as we could, because their English was probably better than our Chinese, but both were pretty bad. So anyway, it was cool to see God orchestrate this connection. And so when we travel overseas, just hearing people's stories of, when I became a Christian, like I lost everyone. I lost my mom, my dad, my community, because to be Thai is to be Buddhist, to be Buddhist is to be Thai. And so it was, their stories are amazing.
Mm. Well, the sacrifices are huge, as you're naming, and also the lessons are profound for us as we listen to those stories. I love that you highlighted that. So I know that you and I are both foodies, so I'm going to ask kind of more of a fun question, perhaps. I want to know, what are some of the favorite foods that you have gotten to try in another country or culture that you have visited?
Yeah. So hands down, my favorite dish of all time is, soy.
Okay.
So it is amazing. It's a northern Thailand dish. So kind of like, how the US, you get fried chicken in the South, or different hot wings in different areas, or whatever it is. So in northern Thailand, it's cow soy. And so whenever I go to Thailand, it's harder in Bangkok, but you can definitely, northern Thailand, it's everywhere. I try to have at least 2 bowls a day. So
Love it.
I'm a glutton for cow soy, but just snacks. Like when I come back, my kids do not want like little trinkets and stuff. I usually come back with a bag of chips, Thai snacks, different toothpaste, flavored toothpaste, all that. So anyway, I'm all about the snacks. But yeah, cow soy is hands down the best.
So, how would you describe cow soy for maybe somebody like myself who has never even seen that before?
It's just a taste of heaven. It is so good. So it's some curry, coconut milk, rice noodles, some lime. There's some garnishes on it, and there's usually a drumstick in it. And it's hot. It's so good, and I can't wait to have it.
Wow. Okay. It's almost lunchtime
It's
here
very
in
good.
California. So now I'm getting a little hungry. Thanks, Kyle. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have anything that
It
you
is.
like to cook for your family that maybe you learned about a different place and then you brought home to share with your family?
So we lived in Uruguay, and Uruguay is on Sunday. It's family day, and so friends and family come over in the afternoon, about 3 to 5 hours. You're just hanging out, talking. You do an asado, and so it's kind of like Santa Maria style barbecue. And what was amazing is that they have tri-tip down there, and so I'm like, what? So it was like being in Fresno, but it's South America. And so you'll sit down and everything slowly comes out from the parrilla, and there's cheese and meat and sausage and tri-tip and other cuts of meat that I don't care for, but they're still good. And it's just wonderful though. But it's all about hanging out with people, talking, catching up for the week, and getting ready for the following week. And it's just we would do it a lot. And so that's what we do here in the States. Well, I think we've had you guys over, and we will just sit down, and it comes out really slowly, and so it's not all at once. And we've made it a little bit Fresno-ian, I guess, with rice pilaf. We've added that to the mix. But tri-tip is in there, the cheese, the meat, the sausage, and you just enjoy people, and just to be in the presence, laugh, cry, whatever you need to do. It's awesome.
Well, I love that you're describing a specific type of food, which again, my mouth is watering, but also that this is about gathering. And it's what we
Mm-hmm.
might call slow food, in that it's cooked slowly and then it comes
Mm-hmm.
out slowly to the table, and it's an invitation for people to connect. I love that. So I want another invitation. We need to have some asado at your house.
And I forgot, we have chimichurri with it.
Oh,
That's right. I mean, chimichurri goes on everything, right? That's the special sauce. So it makes it better.
well, I'm all about the sauce. So we need to have the special sauce on all the dishes. And I have had chimichurri
Mm-hmm.
before. Oh my goodness. So good. Okay, well, I am curious, since you have traveled so much across the globe, do you have a special like gadget or sort of travel thing that you bring with
Mm.
you that just is helpful as something maybe that you could recommend to people who are traveling?
This is going to kind of be a disappointment because I do travel a lot, but I travel really light. And so, because I got to bring souvenirs and food back. So I usually try to carry everything just in a backpack and a carry-on, and I'll have one or two check-ons, and that is for things for people when I get there. Empty it out for missionaries or people who are visiting with T-shirts, and I'll pack it back up. So, got to have enough luggage. But the big thing is just battery life. You got to have a battery. That is the game changer. I don't know how I traveled without before then. So just a regular, I'm surprised I don't have one right here, but I usually just travel with a battery. I don't even use a neck pillow, Dorina. I'm like hardcore, man. I just sit there like this and just enjoy it. I guess maybe like a pro tip I do is, even though I carry a carry-on and a backpack, I only try to access one bag the whole time. So I have like a little small bag. Everything goes in that I'm going to need for the whole plane ride. So I'm not up and down. So a water bottle and this little bag. It has my journal, it has my pen, it has everything I need, my Bible. And so when I need it, I just pull it out, toothbrush, it's in there, all those things. And so that's how I travel. So I can sleep and don't wake other people up.
Okay, I love that pro tip. That's such a great idea. So having a little smaller bag that has all the essentials for on the flight and then putting it within the backpack. We actually tried this strategy on our recent trip to Paris, which I talk about in episode 1, where we just used carry-ons that were backpacks. And then we
Mm.
did bring some extra duffel bags. And my husband had one roller bag that were just strictly for like souvenirs that we were going to bring home. And I love the idea that you bring gifts. So you bring gifts for the people you're staying with, and then you bring souvenirs home for your family. That's such a great strategy.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, a lot of times things are more expensive there in their country than they are here. And so I will, if they have anything that's like expensive, I'll bring that over for them, or have people or friends here send me their mail and I'll bring it to them. So I'm like kind of like the mailman. And then I'll just bring a bunch of candy and snacks and jerky, things that I know that are difficult to get there. And the other thing is Starbucks now has, they have the Via packets. They now have these larger tins, and it's Via filled up in that, and that is a game changer because coffee's not the same anywhere, and so I'll bring that
Okay,
too.
so you need your quality coffee for the flights, unless you're going to a
Yeah.
place perhaps that has some really good quality coffee that you can drink.
Yes.
So good. Okay,
Yes.
last question. If you could go anywhere in the world that you have not visited before, where
Mm.
would you go?
Yeah. So North Korea is on the top of the list without a
Mm.
doubt. There's a book I read a few years, no, more than a few years ago, probably like 20 years ago, called Juchi. and it is about North Korea and like the Christian perspective on that and like what they believe. And my heart just broke for the Korean people. And my heart is to go to people where they have never heard of Jesus before. And so because of that, like that is the ultimate draw for me. North Korea's on the top of the list. Tibet would be second, to hike around Mount Kailash, and then Bhutan would be the third.
Woo, you got your list. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay, one
yeah,
last thing I thought of. I know you
yeah.
have 5 kids. Have you ever traveled with your kids? And do you have any tips for parents who want to bring their kids on exposure trips?
Yes. So, well, we used to live overseas. So that we came back and forth from Uruguay multiple times, twice a year maybe. And then probably about a year and a half ago, I took my second oldest daughter, Olivia, who was 13 at the time. We went to Thailand. So it was four dads, one grandpa, and we each brought one of our kids or grandkid. And it was amazing. It was the best trip in the world because I got to experience it with my kids or with my daughter, and it was a game changer. We're out in the village, and she's like, "Dad, can we stay?" And she was like sincere about it. I'm like, "No, we gotta go back to school." We're at the hotel in Chiang Mai, about ready to get packing up the truck to go to the airport, and she's like, "Dad, can we stay?"
Hmm.
I'm like, "No, honey, we can't. I'm sorry." And so just seeing that, talking through that, and it was one of the sweetest things. So there's a book by Donald Miller called "A Thousand Years," 100 miles in 1,000 years, I think. I think it's chapter 9, where this family is going through a funk, and they don't mention it, but I'm assuming it's a missions trip, or we call it an exposure trip. The dad takes a family, and their life is completely changed. They see each other in a different light. They see each other running towards the same thing. And so I think exposure trips with families, man, you've got to do it because there's no better time than now. You can go at any age. When we moved to Malawi, our friends moved there with a 6-month-old baby. And babies open up doors. Everyone wants to hold a baby. Everyone wants to pinch your cheeks. And so it doesn't matter the age. Like it is life changing for everyone, for the parent to see your kid in a different realm, to see them thrive, to see them follow Christ, and vice versa. It's cool. So yeah, you got to do it. I don't know why you wouldn't.
Well, that's beautiful encouragement. I remember when we first brought our kids when they were little to Haiti. And for some people, it does feel intimidating to bring babies. But like you said, it also opens doors. So I know my middle daughter, Giada, who's friends with your daughter, Olivia, that girl, when she was in an airport or when she was even in the hills of Haiti, like somehow she was this doorway to us. She would make friends with anybody, and she would have this little gathering of kids around her. And I realized that God was using her to open up doors, maybe places where I would have been intimidated to introduce myself. She was just unabashedly getting out there. And so I do believe that it's so important to bring our kids and to help them to have those experiences, even at a young age.
Yes. I can't wait to bring the rest of mine. They keep asking me, when are we going? When are we going?
Oh, yeah. Well, you
So
started a trend, Dad. Now you have to get everyone else there.
yeah, we will. We will.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to just chat a little bit more about some of the things you've experienced in your life and certainly where you have seen God's glory around the world. I appreciate your time and loved having you on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorina. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Friends, I'm excited to just introduce you to some fun recommendations. And these are our Global Glory Chasers recommendations. I always give 3 for the podcast. And this week, I have a few things that were mentioned by Kyle in our interview. So the first one that I want to share with you, which is excellent for travel, and Kyle pointed it out to us, is a battery pack for the phone. It's called the Anchor 622 Magnetic Battery Pack. We're going to share that link in the comments. But one of the things that Kyle mentioned is so cool about this. It's great for the phone. And it's also wonderful to bring on an airplane, like a long flight with you. This one, you can be charging it and it's magnetic and It's like MagSafe compatible, so you can attach your phone to it. So you can actually use your phone while you are charging that battery pack. And it is great, especially for international travel, if you need your phone to be charged for longer periods of time. So definitely check out that recommendation. Our second recommendation for today are packing cubes. And I actually am going to show you, for those on video, what these look like. Now, I got this awesome set of packing cubes, and they come in multiple sizes. This one you can find on Amazon. There's several different varieties, but I love this one because it's a great deal. And also, these come with multiple 5 different packing cube sizes that you can use. So there's like one for your shoes, especially for me, like running shoes that get dirty and I don't want those to touch the rest of my clothes. Then there's some smaller packs. And actually, Kyle in the interview gave us this great hack that you can take one of the packing cubes and you can fill this with the items that you want to use on your flight. So for example, maybe it's your toothbrush and your toothpaste, or a special book, your Bible, maybe even your computer, your laptop, and you just put it in this packing cube. And then you put the packing cube in the top of your carry-on or your backpack, which you're going to bring on the plane. And that way you can easily just grab it out, access it. And I love the packing cubes because you can roll your clothes. They are very compact. I like to organize mine. So I have one for like socks and underwear. I have one for my running clothes. I have one for a little bit fancier outfits, perhaps when I am traveling. And then those are very easy to just grab out of your suitcase, and they are compartmentalized and compact. So these are wonderful packing cubes. This is a 6 set that I will be putting in the show notes for you today, for those of you who are going to be traveling in the future, whether it's a short distance trip or something that is international. And the last recommendation is a book that Kyle mentioned in our interview called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, and it is by Donald Miller. The subtitle is How I Learned to Live a Better Story. Now, this is a book I happen to have on my shelf as well. It came out several years ago, but it's still such a good one and might be a great one to just add to that little packing cube if you want something to read on the flight. But here's a little bit about the book. A Million Miles in 1,000 Years actually chronicles Miller's rare opportunity to edit his life into a great story and to reinvent himself so nobody shrugs their shoulders when the credits roll. And it is through his signature heart-wrenching honesty and hilarious self-inspection or introspection that Donald Miller takes readers through the life that emerges when it turns from boring reality into meaningful narrative. So Kyle shared a little bit about this book and how it made an impact on him, and even the way that he sees the world. Specifically, chapter 9 was a little story that he talked about. But I want to read for you just the introduction to this book to give you a taste of what is to come in the book and kind of to whet your appetite. So here is an excerpt from A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. It says, the saddest thing about life is you don't remember half of it. You don't even remember half of it. Not even a tiny percentage if you want to know the truth. I have this friend, Bob, who writes down everything he remembers. If he remembers dropping an ice cream cone on his lap when he was 7, he'll write it down. The last time I talked to Bob, he had written more than 500 pages of memories. He's the only guy I know who remembers his life. He said he captures memories because he forgets them. It's as though they didn't happen. It's as though he hadn't lived the parts he doesn't remember. I thought about that when he said it, and I tried to remember something. I remembered getting a merit badge in Cub Scouts when I was 7, but that's all I could remember. I got it for helping a neighbor cut down a tree. I'll tell that to God when he asks what I did with my life. I'll tell him I cut down a tree and got a badge for it. He'll most likely want to see the merit badge, but I lost it years ago. So when I'm done with my story, God will probably sit there looking at me, wondering what to talk about next. God and Bob will probably talk for days. I know I've had more experiences than this, but there's no way I can remember everything. Life isn't memorable enough to remember everything. It's not like there are explosions happening all the time or dogs smoking cigarettes. Life is slower. It's like we're all watching a movie, waiting for something to happen. And every couple of months, the audience points at the screen and says, "Look, that guy's getting a parking ticket." It's strange, the things we remember. I tried to remember more and made a list, and it pretty much amounted to the times I won at something, the times I lost at something, childhood dental appointments, the first time I saw a girl with her shirt off, and large storms. After trying to make a list of the things I remembered, I realized my life, for the most part, had been a series of random experiences. And so then he goes on to talk about these random experiences. And really, what Donald Miller is doing is he is calling us up. He's calling us to live the life of adventure and to live a life that is in tune to what God is inviting us to. It's a rare celebration of the beauty of life. So we have some beautiful narrative and we have some humor from Donald Miller. I would highly recommend checking out this book. It is A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And friends, thank you again for joining us for season 5, episode 6 of the Global Glory Chasers podcast, which is made possible and ad-free by so many generous supporters through Substack. You can sign up for my free Glorygram, which is a newsletter I send out every week. It includes an encouraging essay and some great recommendations similar to the ones we share here on the podcast. And you can also become a paid subscriber if you would like to support the podcast and my work. You can head over to dorinaglorygram.substack.com to subscribe for the free newsletter or to just share as you also want to support the podcast. Also, don't forget to check out our Global Glory Chasers membership, which you can also find at my website, dorinagilmore.com. And this month is Filipino Heritage Month, so I want to encourage you to check out a couple of my Filipino American books. They are Cora Cook's Pancit, which came out actually several years ago, but celebrates Filipino culture through food. And then this is my most recent book, Kailani's Gift, which came out this past year and talks about a Filipino American girl who is learning a specific dance called the Taningkling and how to use our gifts to bless others. So I hope that you will celebrate Filipino Heritage Month by checking out those books, maybe from your local library or picking them up on Amazon or a local retailer. Friends, I'm so glad that you spent this time with me today, and I'm looking forward to our next episode, which drops next Wednesday. Blessings to you as you chase God's glory.